Hey everyone. Okay, let's dive right into an incredibly frustrating roadblock for developers trying to deploy AI agents today. And, more importantly, a brilliant open source solution that completely fixes it. If you've been building with Claude code or experimenting with autonomous agents, you've probably hit a wall when trying to take your local code to production. In this explainer, we're breaking down the open-agent SDK. It's a tool that totally cuts the cord on CLI dependencies and lets your agents run absolutely anywhere.
Here's the roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the CLI deployment problem. Second, the in-process solution. Third, architecture and capabilities. Fourth, practical SDK examples. Fifth, comparing alternatives. And finally, ideal deployment scenarios.
All right, Section 1, the CLI deployment problem, or as it's better known, the sub-process bottleneck. Now, this right here, this is the million-dollar question right now. You see, the official Claude agent SDK TypeScript from Anthropic is incredibly powerful, but it actually drives Claude code by spawning a CLI subprocess. It essentially opens a hidden terminal and runs the Claude commands in the background. Now, that works flawlessly when you're just testing things out on your MacBook. But as soon as you try to scale up to production, this architectural choice creates a massive bottleneck.
While a CLI subprocess works perfectly locally, it completely breaks down in modern, constrained cloud environments. I mean, think about it. If you're deploying to serverless environments like Vercel or AWS Lambda, you simply don't have the luxury of installing global binaries. And if you're running isolated Docker containers or spinning up ephemeral CI/CD runners on GitHub Actions, trying to install and maintain a local cloud binary isn't just a pain, it's practically impossible and honestly, a massive security headache.
So let's move to Section 2, the in-process solution. Time to cut the CLI cord.
The answer to all this is the open-agent SDK. It's available in both TypeScript and Go, it's fully MIT licensed, and this package completely removes the CLI constraint. By running the full agent loop, and by that I mean your tool calls, the data streaming, and the multi-turn conversations directly in process, this SDK eliminates path resolution headaches entirely. There's literally no subprocess. It lets you deploy your agent anywhere Node.js or Go can run.
Moving right along to Section 3, Architecture and Capabilities. Let's take a look under the hood.
What's absolutely mind-blowing here is how the SDK handles different AI models so seamlessly. Because the logic is entirely contained within your code, rather than tied to Anthropic's specific CLI tool, the SDK is completely model agnostic. Actually, it auto-detects your provider based on the exact model name you pass it. If you feed it a model with GPT, O1, DeepSeek, QN, or Mistral in the name, it automatically routes the OpenAI completions path. Everything else, it just gracefully defaults to Anthropic. You can literally swap between Claude 3.5 Sonnet and GPT-4o by changing two environment variables. That's it.
And it's definitely not just a wrapper. It's a fully featured engine. Under the hood, it boasts a super powerful query engine equipped with over 35 built-in tools. We're talking file manipulation tools like read, write, and glob, alongside web fetch and direct bash execution. It natively supports the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, allowing you to easily hook up external servers. Plus, it features 20 different lifecycle hooks, letting you intercept actions like pre-tool use or task created. And crucially, this is huge. It auto-compacts your conversation history when you hit token limits, totally preventing your agent from crashing due to an overflow.
Wait, it doesn't stop there. It also ships with a built-in skills system. Think of these as reusable, highly optimized prompt templates. Right out of the box, your agent gets the commit skill to write excellent Git commit messages, a review skill to check your code for security and performance, and a debug skill that enforces systematic, structured investigation of failures. You don't have to write these complex prompts from scratch anymore. The SDK simply hands them to you.
Okay, Section 4, Practical SDK Examples. Let's get into the implementation details.
So the real crucial point is how you actually interface with the SDK in your Node.js application, which, by the way, just requires Node version 18 or higher. The SDK exposes two main surfaces depending on exactly what you need. If you need granular token-by-token streaming control, say you're building a live chat UI, you're going to use the query function, which acts as an async generator. On the other hand, if you want the SDK to just handle the stateful memory of a multi-turn conversation across several interactions, you just use create agent. That returns structured results complete with your exact token usage.
And adding your own capabilities? A total breeze. Let's say you want to build a custom tool, like a live weather fetcher. You simply define the tool using Zod schemas. For example, defining a parameter like a city, string. The SDK uses that exact SOD schema to automatically validate the AI's output, handles all the in-process wiring, and even manages the permission checks automatically before executing your code. It is incredibly slick.
All right, Section 5, Comparing SDK Alternatives. Let's look at the SDK feature matrix.
Looking at the broader landscape here really puts things in perspective. If you use Anthropic's official Claude Agent SDK, you get perfect one-to-one fidelity with Claude Code because it literally runs the CLI. But you sacrifice serverless support. If you use OpenAI's Agents.js, you get a great in-process loop, but you are completely locked into the OpenAI ecosystem. The OpenAgent SDK sits right in the sweet spot. You get in-process serverless compatibility, the ability to write custom tools effortlessly, and the total freedom to route your prompts to Anthropic, OpenAI, DeepSeek, or literally any compatible provider.
Which brings us to Section 6, Ideal Deployment Scenarios. This is exactly where it shines. If you're building AI features for serverless runtimes like Vercel or Cloudflare workers, this is for sure your go-to. If you're setting up automated code reviews in your CI/CD pipelines on GitHub Actions, and you really don't want the nightmare of installing global binaries, this is the solution. And perhaps most importantly, if you're building a commercial product and you want to offer your users the choice between a Claude backend and a GPT-4o backend without writing two entirely separate code bases, well, the OpenAgent SDK actually makes that a reality.
As you sit down to architect your next AI feature, you really have to look down the road. Ask yourself, is your agent's infrastructure dictating where your code is allowed to live? If you're tired of wrestling with artificial constraints and sub-process bottlenecks, it's time to break free. Deploy anywhere. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.